Today, we're talking about two hidden and somewhat silent killers of client success in health and fitness journeys. And these things can often rear their heads as hormonal dysfunction, gut issues, autoimmune concerns, and much, much more. Now, it's common that if you're a coach or a health and fitness professional and you see someone who is super high stress, it might be obvious to you that that high stress is going to manifest in terms of health issues. But what about the chill, calm, cool, and collected client that doesn't seem like a stress cadet, but actually has a lot of pressure and stress from other angles? And oftentimes these individuals who seem very go with the flow actually encounter a tremendous amount of additional stress in their life being go with the flow, especially if they are a people pleaser or someone who does not have firm boundaries with individuals in their life. Now, you might be wondering, how could being a people pleaser or not having boundaries impact things like autoimmune risk, gut issues, or hormone dysfunction? Well, the connection with people pleasing and a lack of boundaries is these things can impact our HPA axis function. And in turn, that can impact the brain and our immune system, as well as our hormones. Now, the reason people pleasing and a lack of boundaries can be so challenging is because it's kind of in our ancestral hardwiring as a survival instinct, right? It's just a mechanism of us wanting to placate and soothe other people, kind of keep everyone happy. We don't want to get voted off the island. We just want to kind of live to die another day, so to speak, or we're just kind of passing the buck a little bit. And with this, each day that passes, the people pleasing and the lack of boundaries can manifest in terms of additional stress incurred on the individual. And really what's happening here is deep down, this is just simply a form of conflict avoidance. And what you're saying, basically, this fear that we're going to be judged by someone else or someone else's opinion of me and accommodating these other people is more important than my goals. And so inside today's episode, we're going to talk about why it's so important to shift out of these behaviors slowly but surely. But first and foremost, we just have to be aware that it's going on, that it actually has some physiological consequences, even though it seems like a very emotional, mental, or psychological issue or concern. Now, in psychology research, they refer to this oftentimes as the Fawn response, which is basically a coping mechanism in which individuals develop people-pleasing behaviors as a way to avoid conflict. They're trying to pacify an abuser or maybe someone in their household, a loved one, a friend, a family member, whatever the case may be. And this is usually motivated by insecurity or low self-esteem caused by trauma bonds in childhood. But again, this could be a childhood thing. It could be early adulthood. Some people learn, again, it's an adaptive mechanism. It's a coping mechanism. So there's not necessarily a one size fits all answer here. It's going to depend on your life, your history, and your environment that you grew up in. But when we people please, what we're doing here is we're unconsciously attempting to control or manipulate the situation. So you might think, well, if someone's kind of a people pleaser or pushover, or very go with the flow, how could they be manipulative or controlling? It doesn't really seem like that would be the case, right? Well, what's happening here is we have a need. We want to meet the need, whether that's being liked, whether that's appearing to be easy, whether that's appearing to not want any sort of conflict, not wanting to have difficult conversations, or to keep certain key individuals in our life. We're basically engaging in these sort of placating, people-pleasing, or sort of soothing behaviors. We want to smooth things over, avoid any sort of bumps in the road, and keep things moving along. Now, we usually learn to people-please in our childhood, and this is when our environment was probably more high stress, more chaotic, more unpredictable, or unsafe. Now, this is sort of a recipe for the fight or flight response. And if you know anything about the HPA axis, we know that when we have this external sort of environmental stimuli, now if you're familiar with the HPA axis, you'll know what's happening here is the brain is essentially signaling the adrenals to produce cortisol. And we have that fight or flight response that's oh so popular and talked about on social media and across the internet in terms of the implications on our health and also just from a survival perspective. Now, the impact on transformations here is when we're people pleasing, we're often hyper aware of other people's emotions around us, but in our attempt to soothe their emotions, we often lead to more upset, inner turmoil, and higher stress for ourselves. This could be as simple as saying yes to a barbecue that runs late on a weeknight and impacts your schedule for you and your children. This could be simple as missing a bedtime or scheduled part of your routine, habits, or behaviors because someone calls you or texts you or asks for something or someone needs a favor And in your attempt to people please, you're basically saying yes to that person means saying no to yourself, your goals, your habits, your routines, your rituals, and whatever steps are necessary to get you to where you want to be. Now, the irony here is that you're actually far more likely to be liked, appreciated, respected, or revered as someone who has made some progress or headway in your own life towards your own goals. The world tends to make room for winners. And so whether it's a successful business owner, someone who's successful with their health and fitness, who has an impressive physique, people often realize that the more successful you become, the more you actually need to say no to. This is actually a famous Steve Jobs quote, which goes like this. People think that focus means saying yes to the thing you focus on, when in reality, it's saying no to the hundreds of other ideas that there are, or this could be inbound requests, or basically people vying for your attention. Saying no now could mean that you're more likely to actually answer in the future, or that person might reach out to you in the future for a bigger deal, a bigger opportunity, a bigger event, or maybe, they're just holding you in higher esteem in general. So when we think about this situation, understand that people pleasing deep down is sort of this adaptive coping mechanism. And usually it's rooted in our childhood or early adulthood or some form of developmental years. And what's happening is when we seem to be go with the flow, when we seem to be easy peasy lemon squeezy, what's actually happening is we're incurring more stress because we're deviating from what's best for us, or kind of the confines of our routine habits, behaviors, and schedule. And by saying yes to these other people out of fear of judgment or protecting our own ego, we are saying no to ourselves, which then further breaks down our own self-esteem, further breaks down our own confidence, and then we're more likely to people please in the future. It's almost like this vicious cycle, right? Versus if we can say no, we can invest in ourselves, we can keep some promises to ourselves and get some forward momentum in terms of our own accomplishments. We actually build that bank of self-esteem. We actually build our own self-confidence, and then we're less reliant upon this opinion of others in terms of building us up. And so what you tend to see with a lot of individuals with hormone dysfunction, autoimmune risk, gut issues, and the stress that they incur, if they're not that tightly wired type A kind of high stress client, a lot of times what's happening is it's someone who is placing the needs of others above themselves. It's someone who's placing someone else's priorities, needs, wants, and interests above their own. And in doing so, it can impact our health from the inside out. And so we have to start by breaking the vicious cycle of saying yes to things and people pleasing, the lack of boundaries, as a way to stand up for ourselves and begin to invest in our own health through these very, very minor things. It could be as simple as adhering to a bedtime that is best for you or your family. It could be not putting yourself in a situation that is going to compromise your goals, from whether it's a nutrition or training perspective, or just keeping you on track, right? Another example would be someone who's seeking sobriety, and they know that they have to be in a certain environment that's going to be best suited for them to maintain that, versus having temptation or exposure or risk from some sort of outside stimulus. So when we think about this, we know that this is rooted in kind of basic human behavior, but can be exacerbated through our childhood relationships, early adult relationships, and the way that people around us may sort of apply pressure to the container that is our lives. Now, with social media, having text message in your pocket, individuals can call you at any given time. We have email, so many different ways for people from our personal life and professional life to gather our attention and basically have requests. It's very easy to people please, probably now even more so than ever, because it's harder and harder to disconnect. It's harder to create those boundaries because technology has served as a way to kind of invade our attention and invade our space. So if you are someone who struggles with this could be a combination of strategies to protect your time, both from a technological perspective, but also maintaining habits, behaviors, and structure that's going to be most beneficial for you in terms of your goals, whether that's a fat loss goal, whether it's living longer and getting healthier in terms of your metabolic health, or maybe it's related to your performance and your training for something. It could be a race. It could be a lifting competition. It could be stepping on stage for something physique related, right? All of these things require having some form of boundary or limitation or restriction. And remember again that sometimes by saying no in the short term, we're actually saying yes to something bigger long term. By saying no to these other people in the short term, we are saying yes to ourselves. And this doesn't mean that you need to say no to every single thing. It just means that there are individuals who over time have let this snowball into a massive obstacle and roadblock in terms of their own lives. So if you're an individual who has some sort of unexplainable health issues or concerns, and you don't really seem like the high stress type, maybe see if there's instances where this type of people pleasing is invading your life, your habits, your behaviors. If you're a health and fitness coach and you help others achieve their health and fitness goals, I would consider which one of my clients maybe is not the high stress type, the stress cadet, high achiever type A individual, but who is someone who's maybe placating others, appeasing others, and putting their own interests on the back burner in order to basically care for those people. But they're also in the process, right? We're kind of protecting our own ego from fear of judgment from these outside individuals, people with some insecurities or lower self-esteem. It's very easy to engage in these behaviors because we want to be liked. It's a very natural tendency that people have, but in the process, we could be sabotaging our own health and our own progress. And so this is something we need to be mindful of because we can't actually shift the behavior until we have some awareness that is actually going on. Now, not everybody has the same degree of people pleasing, and not everyone has the same degree of lack of boundaries or the same level of structure or rigidity when it comes to their boundaries. So understand this exists on a gradient scale, but the more that we're engaging in these sort of tendencies or behaviors, the more likely it is that over time it can manifest in terms of some health issues. This is why oftentimes you see there are key points in terms of autoimmune risk for women in their lifetime. And it's often when they're becoming a caretaker for someone else, or there's a major change in their season of life, or there's higher stress that's incurred that leads to elevated body burden and a series of issues related to both gut, hormone, and immune system function. So realize it's not just those high stress clients that are going to have health issues. There are clients who may not seem like they are tightly wound individuals, but they're feeling a lot of pressure from other areas of their life. And that pressure may just come from people pleasing and a lack of boundaries. So some actionable steps in terms of moving forward out of today's episode. Number one, look at our time management and if we are actually structuring things in a way that's best for our schedule and carving out time for ourselves in terms of self-care, our routines and rituals that are going to keep us healthy and on track. When we're saying yes to things, is it a 100% yes? Am I saying yes because I actually want to say yes to this thing? Or am I saying yes because I'm worried that this person isn't necessarily going to like me or is going to change their opinion of me if I say no? And the third thing we can do here is just effectively communicate and set expectations in terms of our wants, needs, and boundaries. So if you are someone who struggles with this might start with friends, family, coworkers, or people who you'd like to keep in your life, but you need them to honor and respect your schedule and your needs, wants, and desires. Now, if this is someone you don't necessarily want to keep in your life, well, that's an entirely different type of communication. But many individuals, they want to keep their friend group, they want to keep their family happy. Otherwise, they wouldn't be people pleasing in the first place. But a little bit of communication and expectation setting can go a really long way in terms of prioritizing our own self-interests and staying happy and healthy en route to our health and fitness goals. So this is one way we can offset some of those risk factors that these individuals might have for hormone dysfunction, gut issues, autoimmunity, and so much more. Understand that when we incur that extra stress, we are basically signaling our HPA axis that there's continued threats in our environment. And that's never a good thing when it comes to optimal transformation, body composition, health, or longevity. If you're interested in more content like this, make sure you are following Sam Miller Science on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. There's also the YouTube channel. So if you're watching on video, thank you so much. Make sure you're subscribed and you hit that thumbs up button to support the content here today if it was helpful for you. You can also leave a comment, and that's always a great way to support the videos and also get your questions answered if you have any. If you're on audio, leave that 5-star rating and review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. This helps to support the ripple effect of coaching, not just the content that I share here, but also a lot of the concepts that are necessary in order to change the lives of millions of individuals worldwide. Thanks so much for being here and tuning into today's episode. If you're interested in learning more about the HPA axis, understanding a bit more on gut health, autoimmune risk, coaching clients who actually have these issues, and helping to see them to the other side of their transformation, check out metabolismschool.com to learn more about our functional nutrition and metabolism specialization program, where we're helping clients not only manage their stress, but put in practical strategies in day-to-day life to offset some of these risk factors and optimize their health overall. Thanks so much for listening, and I'll talk to you guys in the next show.